Okay, well, I get to be the co-pilot here for a while, so I decided that I would take that opportunity to shoot out a video. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the evolution of our picker traveling, and I'm going to talk a little bit about when we started picking all the way until today on the Crazy Picker Life with Wheeler, Dealer, and Banana Peeler. Welcome, fellow pickers and would-be adventurers. It's Dealer from the Crazy Picker Life Traveling Edition. So we are on a picking trip. We just picked up a bunch of stuff. I made some kind of a video that probably is either released before this or after this video. I'm not sure which. We're not quite at the ending of the picking trip, so there may be a finale on it. So our traveling for our business has changed dramatically from the beginning to now. When I did some serious things on eBay initially, I really didn't travel much. In fact, I bought things for the most part sight unseen, whether it was air purifiers or diabetic test strips. I placed advertisements, or I found people selling those, and I would buy them either talking to people on the phone or through messages or emails, and occasionally I would actually meet up with somebody. But when Wheeler joined the business and we started to do some rummage sales and we started to buy some camera gear, and then shortly after we started to buy all kinds of stuff, our traveling increased pretty much every year until maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago. And that would be about a, what would you say, Wheeler, about a 6 or 7 year run?
Yeah.
So if you see me glancing up, we're on, I can show you here.
I have a long following distance right now, so
we're in some construction here, so I keep glancing up. It's not very fun. We are super fully loaded.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to make this as valuable as possible and keep one eye on Wheeler and one eye on the road and one eye on the camera. And of course, this is my phone, so my focus for the camera is over here, and looking straight at the camera, it looks like I'm not looking at you, but anyway. Okay, so when we started actual physical picking, and for some of you that watched our channel early on, we actually, one of the first couple of years of picking, we did a challenge called the $1 to 50K challenge, where we started with $1, bought an item, flipped the item, bought some more, flipped some more, bought some more, flipped some more, all trying to get to $50,000. And that really, around that time, was the first traveling that we did. And at that time, although we weren't starving, we weren't without much, we didn't have a lot of money. We had just started this. We had not generated a big wad of money for inventory. We did not have a travel budget. My wife was working full time, but she was closer to the beginning of starting a new position. She's been there now like 12 years, and is doing pretty well, enjoys her job, paid well, all that. And we had just gotten this van, and before that, previous to that, we had sort of some financial thin points, is one way to put it. And so we were slowly easing into full-time picking, and generating some pretty good sales and some pretty good income, but the savings was thin, and the building of the inventory is costly. That's always an expense. And so at the beginning of our outside face-to-face picking career, we traveled, but a lot of it was just we'd shoot out on trips and we'd come back. We certainly did picking locally, but we lived in a town of 5,000 people, and that was the largest town within 100 miles. And so our local picking was not enough to live on. So some of the trips that we took, everything good?
Yep. Slow it down there for that back change in case it's kind of extreme.
Yeah, no worries on that.
Yep.
Some of the trips that we took during this time period would have been like city rummage sales. So we might have went 40, 50, 60, 80 miles, even 100 miles, and then we would spend the Saturday morning or the Friday morning in the city where the city rummage sale was, and then we would come back in the afternoon, and that would be that. Or we would go from Colby, Kansas over to Denver, Colorado to the Mile High Flea Market, or maybe Colorado Springs to the flea market down there. And then we would get there early, go to the flea market, and then we would spend all day at thrift stores and what else? What do you call those? Pawn shops, some other types of stores. I mean, we basically, some rummage sales, we would scour pretty much hard without eating hardly to make that trip worthwhile, because it was a 3-hour trip, and if we didn't find a few $1,000s in retail goods, where we would pay anywhere from $300, $500, maybe $800, maybe $1,000 for inventory, if we couldn't resell that stuff for a couple thousand, 3,000, maybe more on occasion, the metrics of that trip didn't work out because of food and gas and fees to get into the flea market and just our time. So we really felt we had to make that count. We didn't stay overnight at that time. So we would go, I don't know, we would leave sometime like 6 a.m. And a lot of times, Wheeler, we would roll in like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The last, I think it was Savers. There were some Savers thrift stores that would be open till either 9 or 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we'd grab some food. And then like dead dogs, we'd drag our butts home. And sometimes when we had our commercial location, which it's been 5.5 years, maybe 6 years ago, we had a commercial location for a good year, and then we moved to another commercial location for a good 3 years, and then back home, and then of course recently we moved to a different town. And so we would come back to our commercial location, and sometimes we would unpack. So those were long days. Now, another trip that we started to do early in the game, I'm trying not to shake here. I think this thing has some image stabilization, but...
Could be digital, I'm not sure.
Oh, getting carry out. Wow, this phone is funny because we have the GPS running. I've got texts coming in. I've got messages from eBay. I've got sales.
Yeah.
It's pretty... You guys don't see any of that on the video, but it's like, wow, I got a lot of information. I feel like I'm wearing Google glasses or something.
There you go. Blast from the past.
So another trip that we took was one of these highway rummage sale type situations, and there were 2 of them in our area that we started with, and we added a third one year in Missouri, on the far side of Missouri, on the east side of Missouri. That one didn't turn out so well. I think it was St. Louis all the way down to Arkansas, and we didn't find as much there. And I don't remember how we stayed overnight there.
It's in the van, I'm sure.
Yeah, so early on, we did a couple of different things with the big van. It was Wheeler and I, and then it was Wheeler and I and Jake, Banana Peeler. One time or two times we brought a tent, got rained out. Another time, or we would stay in the van. A little later on, we would stay a combination of one night at a hotel and then one or two nights at a van. And a couple of them, we would just drive home in the middle of the night. And so, sometimes when we stayed in the van, it was hot and humid, and so you'd crack the windows, then the mosquitoes would come in. Sometimes it was hot and humid, and you'd crack the windows, and the rain and the mosquitoes would come in, and the windows would steam up, and it was like crazy humid. One time we got so much rain that you stepped out of the van in the morning, and you were in a parking lot when you drove in there, and when you stepped out of the van in the morning, it was like you could not. It was all mud. It was standing water was 3-4 inches in some places. And so there certainly were adventures. Now some of the reasons that we didn't stay in hotels were because we were trying to cheap Charlie it, and some of the reasons we didn't stay in hotels is because some of it was in the boonies where there really aren't any hotels unless you reserve them a year ahead, which as we've gone farther into our picking career, I'll talk about that a little bit, but we figured some things out along those lines. Sleeping in the van is pretty rough. By the second night of sleeping in the van, you're feeling pretty beat. I think, Wheeler, do you remember? I think the first year we went, at least I think we had the minivan.
Probably, yeah.
There was no sleeping in the back of that van because it was all, seats that you couldn't take out, and so you would sleep in the front seat. You recline it a little bit.
Yep, actually I do remember that.
Yeah.
It's sort of all faded together, but yeah, definitely.
By morning, you were a smaller cat during those years. You were 12 and 13 and 14, whatever. Man, my legs were messed up by morning. You'd need a mega stretch and some mega coffee.
Yep.
So there wasn't much for hotels up there, and of course we saved money. But by the second day, boy, you were ripe. And so we looked pretty scary, and we were out there in the middle of Nebraska, in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and we had a lot of fun. And it was a way to learn more about picking. We got as many as 200-300 miles away from home base. It was relatively inexpensive. We learned a lot about making contacts with people. We made a lot of contacts that were either mini hordes of stuff before or after or during the junk jaunts. We made some contacts that we see year after year after year. Saw some great scenery. Some other things that we did during those years, we would go to Omaha and also Wichita, and we threw a government auction in there once where we bought some stuff online and had to go tweedle-deedle-deedle, go get it. And that was a 2-day crazy trip. I think we had 4 or 5 children. I had 4 or 5 children, and some of them were really young, and that was a rough trip. And you had to have an adult with you to go into the government facility to go get the stuff. And my babysitter Wheeler and Kate here were not. That guy's all over the place.
Yeah, he is, unfortunately.
Yeah, keep one eye on him. He might be blowing around or whatever,
Yep.
but it is
Yeah.
Friday night.
We're going to tap the brakes.
Yeah. So there were some logistical things there. I think we were in the minivan then too, actually.
Yep, probably.
It's early on, we did everything we could to expand our reach, learn about stuff, find the best stuff. We were determined to find the best stuff, and we didn't let travel stop us because of money. So what we did when we traveled early on, especially, is we worked pretty much dawn to dusk and beyond. When anything was open, when anybody would show us stuff, we would look at it.
Yeah. Can I add something in there?
Yeah.
We tried all different types of things. One thing, you mentioned the storage units already, that we bought some storage
No, I
units
didn't.
one time.
Right.
I wasn't listening 100%, but I didn't think you mentioned that yet. That was pretty crazy.
You want me to talk about that a little
Well, you
bit?
could. I'm sure you've told the story before.
Well,
That was in the minivan.
that was in the minivan.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, that was crazy.
Well, so we didn't have like some sort of picker plan when we started, and so we were influenced by Storage Wars. We were influenced by American Pickers. We were influenced by all the Pawn Stars shows, and we wanted to get out there and live it. And what I was saying here before Wheeler mentioned that storage unit thing is we didn't let the travel stop us. We would work super early till super late. Sometimes, I'll give two quick examples. You remember when we were buying bag phones?
Oh, yeah.
We would buy bag phones because we hit on a couple. We got a couple bag phones that sold for decent money, and we thought all bag phones sold for money until we started buying all the mangy ones.
Yep.
And then one time, these people are like, "Oh, we got bag phones." We're like, "Well, we're not coming back for a year," and they're like, "Oh, we got 30 of them."
Yeah.
But we live a little ways out, and we're going to be here till it's dark, and then we'll go home. And so we followed these people on like a 30-40 mile back road Nebraska goose chase.
Crazy.
And they lived way out there.
Way
and it
out
was
there.
dark. And I don't even remember where we went when we were done there. If we went home, we might have been going home. Who knows?
Who knows?
But it was at least 10 o'clock when we got to where they were, which is an easy half hour after dark in summer. We're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's gravel roads, and it's dipsy doodles with like bridges that say 1,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds, no guardrails, hard to see anything. It's an interesting police car.
Yeah.
I guess it's a standard one. So basically, we would offset the cost of the gas and offset food and lodging, and we brought a lot of food along in the early days. We'd offset that with hard work, and if we did happen to stay overnight, on both sides of it, we would pick like crazy. So it was at least 10 or 12 hour hardcore picking days, talking to people, finding stuff. Another time we had a guy where we probably bought $100 worth of miscellaneous fishing stuff and some other neat stuff, and we talked to him. He said he had a bunch of fishing stuff and beer signs and stuff, and we ended up, after the daily sale closed down at 8 or 8:30, we went back to his hideout, and he had unbelievable fishing collection, lure collection, and we ended up buying some. He had some cameras. That's what it was.
Yep.
We bought some cameras from him and some other stuff. And by the time we were done with him, it was like 11 o'clock at night. And so then we weaseled our way back to the fairgrounds up there and slept and started all over again at 7 a.m.
Yep. Showing us the $1,000 boxed lure or something like that. Crazy.
The $1,000 boxed lure. Yeah, he had one that was his pride and joy.
A rare one.
And so we kept looking for that one. We've never found one. So that was what I would call the beginning of the push to be legitimate, to be really full-time, to really learn what we were doing. We were buying stuff that we had no reason to buy. We bought everything. We learned everything. It was crazy time.
Yep.
But the travel really was minimal cost. And, you know, I'm not going to pretend I'm a tax expert, and I'm certainly not giving tax advice, but the traveling thing is very deductible, and so the mileage is very deductible. It's sort of like cash flow, though. You got to have a little cash to put into it, and then you can deduct it on your taxes, yada, yada, yada. Okay, I'm not really giving advice. I'm just saying that travel is a business expense. And so when it was all said and done, that's how we got our feet really wet.
Mm-hmm.
And we turned from green to what? Yellow?
Something like that.
Green to red? I don't know. But we got better at what we were picking up. We got better at asking questions. We got better at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to make contacts. And we started to learn where to go.
Yep.
We got more efficient, for sure.
Definitely.
And I'll end the efficiency with how this trip just went. This trip was what I would call a tough trip, but super efficient. Sort of like if you're playing bar darts and you take a handful of darts and you just throw them all at once at the board, and you probably don't even hit a bullseye, but you hit the wall and you hit the floor and you hit the dartboard and you hit the people next to you and you hit everything. You get a lot of interesting results.
Yeah.
Like maybe you get in a fight for the guy that you hit his arm and it's stuck in his arm, and you get the bar owner mad. He's not going to really...
There's all over the road.
All over. Oh, that guy?
Yeah.
Same guy?
No, I don't know who it is, but he passed that van there and he's just all over the road.
Yeah, he's probably drunk.
Over to one side, big truck, semi-truck.
Oh, semi-truck.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel the wind out here? It's pretty
No.
windy. No?
Not really either.
Okay.
Right now, the road's rough.
The road is rough.
Other than that.
He's probably eating dinner.
Yeah, could be.
So you see an awful lot of stuff when you're traveling on the road a lot too. I mean, our biggest year was, I think, 2 years ago when we went on our 6-week trip. But we put, I don't know, we put 35,000 miles or something on that year. That was a lot of miles that year. Mega miles.
Yep.
30,000 miles. I don't know, a lot. This year it's a lot less. Last year was a lot less. Okay, so I would call that the beginning. Now, after we gained some traction, we got a commercial location, we started to hone our camera game down quite a bit. We started going on what I would call vacation/picking trips. And we were both, my wife and myself, both from Wisconsin area, and that's a good day's drive from northwest Kansas, and we wanted to go back and visit, and primarily my wife wanted to visit her family, and I did visit my family as well, and so we wanted to go back and forth 2 or 3 times a year. And so we did that, and what we did during this period of time, this 2-3 year period of time mainly, and we still do some of this today, is my wife would visit, I would visit minimally, and I would take some of the kids and she would take some of the kids, and Wheeler and I here would pick like mad.
Just book it, just go crazy.
We just went everywhere we traveled. We would go, and then we would go extended from there. We were looking, making contacts, scouring. One time we got on the car ferry and went across Lake Michigan into Michigan. We went, in Wisconsin, all over the place. We went south of there. We went Omaha area. We went Iowa. We went everywhere.
Yeah.
So part of the fun of this was we actually got to go with our family, and I got to, go to zoos, and we got to go out to eat, and we got to stay in some hotels. Now in the middle ground there, we stayed in hotels, but a lot of times what we would do is my wife would stay with some of the kids with the family, and then Wheeler and I, and maybe Banana Peeler, or maybe Benjamin, we would stay in a hotel, and it usually was a middle ground hotel with the continental breakfast, right? Mm-hmm. So it was better than staying at Grandpa's house.
Yep.
Because there wasn't enough beds, and it's just too many cooks in the kitchen, and so we would usually, the way it ended up during this period of time is we would end up, all of us, staying in a reasonably nice suite or a bigger hotel for half the time, and then we would be jammed in some cheaper hotels and out picking the rest of the time. Mm-hmm. And then logistically, we'd have this poor van so full of stuff where I'd have to limit the personal stuff for travel, and we would maximize every inch of this van. Mm-hmm. Now, during that time, one of the interesting things and the challenging things that we would do when we were on the road, we'd be on the road anywhere from 5-6 days on a minimum to, I think some of those road trips were like 14 days. Mm-hmm. And we would try to stay as many days as we could in one area, but because we were trying to hit all these different areas, we made some contacts over time. We wanted to go through and visit these people. We wanted to try different things. There were city rummage sales, there were antique stores, there were thrift stores, there were some camera stops, all this kind of stuff. We would stay 2 or 3 days in a given area, and the hotels loved us and hated us. They mostly hated us. We had sometimes 6, 7, or 8 people, and we would take all the stuff from the van and load it into these hotel rooms. And so as we got into nicer rooms, that meant that you were bringing stuff on the dollies into the main lobby, zippity zip, 6, 7, 8, 9 trips mm-hmm. into the elevator, upstairs. Sometimes you'd have really crazy American Picker stuff hanging off your stuff, so people would be asking questions. Sometimes they thought we were bringing like parties or drugs or who knows what the front desk. Sometimes they would ask, sometimes they would tail us, and so we'd be bringing this stuff in and out of the hotel. It's a lot of work, and we did it almost all the time. One time we didn't do it. It was raining like mad. We pull into Omaha, and this vlog is on our vlog somewhere early on. It was raining. We didn't want to unload. We parked under a light way out there. 11 o'clock at night, we're like, all right, we're all dead tired. Get the call at 5:30 a.m. from the front desk and the police. Somebody broke into the van. And so that was a whole mess. The windows are expensive in the van. They took a few $1,000s worth of stuff. Fortunately, they didn't take everything. And it was a pain in the butt to sweep it all up, tape it all up. You couldn't get a window replaced over the holiday weekend. A lot of times we would travel. It would be Memorial Day weekend on one end, and it would be Labor Day on the other. That's when we traveled, and so one of the weekends was that, and this one happened to be Memorial Day weekend, and it was my birthday weekend, and the day the van got broke in was my birthday morning. Woohoo! That was not a fun day. So ever since, we always take things into the hotel if we have them. Now, towards the end of this period, we started staying in nicer hotels and started, eating nicer meals. And we started actually vacationing a little bit more and doing a little bit less picking because we had many places we could go, and it wasn't that hard to load up. It got a lot easier to fill the van.
Yep.
And it got a lot easier to get denser and denser stuff, higher end stuff, better stuff, cleaner stuff, not so stinky stuff that would kill you when you're in the van with it. Have these crazy things hanging over the backs of the seats and over your head. When we came back from Lake Michigan over to Michigan from Wisconsin on the ferry, our van was so full, there was signs and crazy stuff right up over our heads, and I was so burnt out and tired from all the miles that we put on Michigan. We only had figured we had one chance to. Michigan on the lakeside is pretty sparse, and we put probably, I don't know, 800 miles in 2 days or something over there.
Up one side and that all the way back down.
Oh my gosh,
crazy!
Saw a lot of cool stuff. I'd like to go back, and we found some good stuff, but we were so tired, and we had to make the what do you call that thing? The ship. The ferry took off at like 7 in the morning. And so to get to it and load up, it was like getting up at 5 on top of everything else. And I was so burnt, I actually mistaken the brake for the gas when we got on the ferry. And I pressed the van into a big Cadillac Escalade and actually pushed it slow motion, like 3 feet. And everybody around is like looking, what the heck's going on? And they came over, are you all right? Are you drunk? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, I just, made a mistake. Whoa. And the Escalade was fine. We pushed the hitch, and my bumper was pushed in, and it was fine. But those were the days, Yeah,
I mean, we drove almost all the way from the ferry thing all the way up to the tip of top Michigan there.
Almost to Canada.
Yeah, all except for the very weird island area up there.
Yeah, so there's still some stuff for us to do over there, but we haven't been back. So at the end of this, though, we started staying in nicer hotels. We started staying in multi-room suites where my wife and myself could have a room to ourselves, and then the kids could have another room, and then there was a main area with some pull-out couches. We used to have to try to sleep 8 people in a room for 5, and all those things when the kids are younger. We did all those kind of things. We would get tickets for 2 to breakfast, and we'd have to shuffle a few more people through there. And one time we went to a hotel, and this town just had no suites. They had nothing, and so our choice was buying 1 room for $120 or buying 2 rooms for $240. And we went in there, and we got in there, and it was a weird hotel because people were like trailing us, and they must have had some trouble with it in this area, but they nabbed us, and they said, you get out or you buy another room. And so we ended up having to buy another room. And so those days were a little tougher. Towards the end of that period, which is a few years ago, we started staying in nicer suites, nicer hotels, embassy suites, where you get a big breakfast for 8, and some of the extended stay places. And we even started getting into the what's a rental home thing? Airbnb and some other things like that. And that was pretty nice. And of course, you can do some tax planning, traveling on that. And the business was all paying for it. So I think 3 years ago, we probably were on the road overnight, like 5 weeks for the year. 2 years ago, that year, when we did our 6-week vacation / picking, we were on the road for over 10 weeks for that year. Last year, I think it was back down to probably 3 or 4 weeks. And this year, I bet you it will be 2.5 weeks. And there's a certain fun to traveling, but I think we maxed it out the year we did 10 weeks on the road. I think we all realized that a a family of 8, it's fun, but the traveling end of it with teenagers and everybody getting older and us picking and not really getting a vacation as much as the others, etc., 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 it became too much. And so we, just like everything we seem to do, we maxed it out. We were eating well, though. There was out to eats when we wanted to. We were, when we stayed in hotels, we had the what do you call that? With the fridge and the stove and the kitchen table, the efficiency. We started the bed and breakfast, the Airbnb, which meant you got to spread out and people got their own bedrooms, and you had some storage, and you had off-street parking, and sometimes you had like lakefront views, like up in Sheboygan we got a couple lakefronts up there. And the picking got better and better, where we might have been picking and making contacts an average of 3-4 hours a day, would you say, Wheeler? Mm-hmm. And maybe one day we would go out for a full day, and then we would have a few relaxing days in there along with it. And it wasn't like go, 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 go. And so that felt a little bit better. But, the funny thing is, you got a guy coming in here. Slow down or speed up, one or the other. Speed up.
Could get over there.
You got to speed up or slow down, because that guy's just dumb as bricks.
Got it.
You can't, if you get in his blind spot and he's dumb as bricks, he'll take us out.
Got it.
So, coinciding with that, though, everybody got older and bigger, and so the van got smaller and the appetites got bigger, and the kids wanted to do more fun things, and so picking was fun. But when we tried to do the fun things and go picking and every other things, it got to be pretty much of a circus. And so that leads us up to probably 2 years ago to now. I would say we're back to almost like focused picking trips.
Yep.
So we go on vacations with the families. We do some picking, but I would say we're averaging a couple hours a day, and we're going to see mostly contacts or places where we know stuff is. If we go to rummage sales, we'll do it sort of as a family, and that's a whole different vibe than going out and shaking the bushes hard. And I don't mind that. And then what Wheeler and I will do is we will go on focused trips. Like, we'll go to the Denver flea market, we'll go to our Highway 36 and our junk jaunt sales. We'll do like this trip, which I'll talk about briefly here in a minute. And then when we go on picking mode with the family and vacation, we have a good portion of it that are vacation, and then we do the necessary picking.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years ago, we went on a 4-week in one place vacation. We rented a beach house near the beach in South Carolina. We did a lot of different activities, a lot of fun. We did some picking. We made some contacts. We took a week traveling out there and a week back. And we did buy a van. We had a van full, but we had a pretty full van anyway for a 6-week trip. Mm-hmm. That was probably the pinnacle. And then we did some other picking trips that week. You know where the wipers are, right?
Yeah.
And then, we got hooked in with some gold clubs and things like that on hotels. So we started to get really nice rooms. They treat you really nice. You get a nice night's sleep. Everything got better and better and better. But now we're doing more focused trips and really less traveling. I think we're to the point where traveling in one vehicle with 8 kids, and they're not kids, they're not children anymore. 4 of us are adults, and there's 2 right behind, and then there's 2, 7 and 8 year olds. It's too much to have in this vehicle. Yeah, we're still good. Okay, so Wheeler reminded me of a couple things I haven't talked about yet. One was the storage unit thing early on, and one was sending stuff home. So, storage unit early on, we were going back and forth to Denver quite a bit, buying at the flea markets in Colorado Springs, and I think one time we decided to do our hand at storage units, and we were still with, this was really early on, and for us, the bottom line is we found some good stuff, but all the extra stuff between taking it to the dump before we come home, which was an adventure, and I think we had a refrigerator, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm sure. It was a super learning experience.
Yeah.
That was about the bottom line of it.
And all the stuff that we really couldn't sell online, it didn't work out for us. We would have had at that point, I think what we decided is, hey, we would have to commit to this, and we wanted to commit a different direction. We went a little different direction, more towards online stuff. I wasn't ready to do the storefront / online / however, I was wanting to deal with online, and I think the biggest reason is we just had 2 young children born in the house, and I didn't want to, my wife was working away from the house, I had to be home, and so it just made more sense to have things we could ship and not have people coming in and out of the house and all that. So that didn't work out for us, but we weren't afraid to try it. Another thing that we did heavily is we shipped stuff home from wherever we were at, and we had a way to ship priority mail boxes up to 80-pound boxes, give or take, 20 by 20 by 20 for like $6 or $7. There was a shipping label that was a return label that you could, I used for another business adventure with the test strips. You could slap it on a box, bring it to a post office, they would charge $7 to your account, and it would show up in your post office in your town. And so when we traveled, we used that actually pretty heavily.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a good thing you bring that up, because how did we get all the stuff in the van? Well, the van was always full of the non-shippable stuff, and it was always full of the good stuff. And then we would send anything, including our clothes and anything light and durable. And one time we packed crazy camera gear in there, and most of it made it unscathed.
Yep.
Our biggest score that we sent home was like 80 boxes.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say that. Yeah.
And these are like 15 by 15 by 20, up to 20 by 20 by 20. Some of the heavier ones, 12 by 12 by 12. But I would say throughout a 5-year swing, we probably sent home 300 boxes, maybe more. I don't know.
I was gonna say 4, yeah, right around
400. I don't know.
4 seems a bit optimistic, somewhere around there.
A lot.
Between 3 and 4.
A lot.
A lot.
And actually, that's what we did in South Carolina as well.
Yep. That's why I thought of that when you were.
Yeah, I forgot sort of about
Yep.
that. So logistically, that was a boon. Now, if we had to send them UPS, could we have done it? It would have been a lot more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have been logistically as good for us. And so there are other shipping options where you can get pretty much wholesale, but you'd have to be pretty creative to do that. Now, the other thing that we did recently is we found a honey hole, and I guess that brings us to the traveling of today. When we travel, we don't sleep in the van anymore. Those days are over.
Yep.
We tend to travel more during the day and less overnight. I guess I should touch on that. To compress time frames and to not stay overnight and to save money, what we used to do, Wheelers, we used to drive through the night.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you're driving with young kids, driving through the night is the only way to go 12 hours, because otherwise you're stopping every 2 hours for bathrooms and food and all that kind of stuff. So when you travel through the night, you can get a 4 or a 6 or even more hour stretch in there and actually get somewhere. And when you drive a big van, you can make some sort of time, but you're not doing 80, 85, 90 like you can do in a sports car or whatever. You're doing 70. average, 65. So you need to make some time. So we used to travel through the night, and I remember we would travel through the night. We would drop off the family, and then you and I would go picking until we dropped, and then we would, we take Sundays off. So a lot of times we would take that as a full recovery day, which means you're not out really having fun.
Yep.
So, I used to be 20 years old. And when I was in my 40s, some of this stuff sort of worked. And I think as I got into my mid and late 40s, and now I'm in my early 50s, that don't fly no more, boy. I can't recover like I used to. And now that you're in your younger 20s, Wheeler, you probably understand what I'm talking about.
Yep. I mean, we used to list for 24 hours in a row and things like that. I mean, we used to do crazy stuff early on.
We were not afraid to do crazy stuff. And really, if you want to make it in this business and you're not, you got to do the right things. But sometimes you have to do the right things, odd hours, long hours, until you get it, until it happens. We did a lot of that. Okay, so sending stuff home. Where are we at today? I guess I talk about our focused trip. So it took us probably 5 years to really break down and crack our biggest niche, which is camera stuff. And you could be in any market, whether it's like Shrubby Knuckles has his athletic stuff. You got people that are in automotive parts. You got people that are in clothing. You got people that are in store closings. Whatever you're into.
Estate sale buyouts.
Estate sale buyouts. If you want to be closer to full-time and making good money full-time, you got to crack the code. And so it took us probably 5 years to crack the code with the camera stuff. Once we cracked the code, we really have more camera stuff than we can handle. And part of what I'm buying it like crazy for is because it doesn't go bad. It doesn't expire. The outlook is good. It's a little like gold.
Yeah, the film was expired, but other than that.
Yeah, the musty film was expired. Oh my gosh. So, where am I going with this? So, we cracked the code, and most of our picking now is by choice and not by necessity. I don't have the wolf looking over my shoulder looking for money for bills. I don't have, worries about where next month's mortgage payment comes from. We got good food on the table. I got good helpers at home. All that. So that was obtained through hard work and diligent work and figuring out what works and what doesn't. So now when we go picking, we plan our picking trips extensively. We go to places we like. We look for the best stuff. We don't pick up everything. We pick up the best stuff. Camera stuff we have an abundance of, and that funds our business for the most part. So this trip, for example, we have an out-of-state location. We have an out-of-state honey hole where we can pick up stuff. And this particular trip was a 2-day long trip, but basically we zip up, we stay at a nice hotel, we have a nice dinner. There's not much time for sightseeing other than driving. We went into this picking situation. We handed some money. 3 hours later, the van is full with great stuff. We zip back in the rain. It's raining.
Yep.
And we'll be home tonight at midnight. So all told, what is that? 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's about a 42-hour trip. It's a one night over. It's some good food. It's some good miles, and we spent 10 grand, right? But it's a 10 times or more, and that is called concentrated picking. And so what we might do this fall is we might go on a trip for 2 weeks with the family, and we might do selective picking. And so that's still a picking trip, but it's not like a concentrated, all-out, balls to the wall, send stuff home, pack stuff in, bring stuff up into the room, down into the room. Now when we go with the family, we Airbnb a house. We take some time to pick the location so that it's scenic. We get a nice kitchen. We get nice bedrooms. Maybe a nice location like on Lake Michigan with a nice view. We still go off season so that we don't pay through the roof. I mean, we're pickers. We try to get the best deals. My wife shops for coupons galore, so when we go out to eat, it might be a $200 meal for all 8 of us, but if we didn't have the coupons or didn't go to the right place, it might be a $300 or $350 meal. So we have a lot of fun. We really maximize our family time. We pick in the right places. We pick up the coolest stuff. Our travels are not nearly as taxing. So like when we went to that pick today and we're only there 3 hours, Wheeler, I didn't feel like I was about to fall face first, tired into a bunch of crap. It actually went really smoothly.
Yep.
We've actually trained, in a sense, the people we pick from, so they know that we're coming with totes. They know they have, it's crazy. It's crazy how, if you are diligent and take notes and continue to try to upsell your activities, maximize your time, ask the right questions, upgrade your stuff, invest some money in your tools, and just really push the limits of what's possible. In 7 or 8 short years, we went from bringing our food along and going maybe 300 miles away max, staying in the van, not even bringing a change of clothes, change of underwear, just rough stuff. Some of the stuff we would buy, you hated to be in the van with because it was all dirty, stinky, musty, spiders. Oh my gosh. That's on one side, and those are great days, great adventures. I think you have to go through that if you haven't. To now, it's a lot smoother.
Yep.
And are we, when the year is done, do I have a lot of money left in my hands? I have enough. But the class of traveling that we travel in, now our limit is about 2,000 miles away, something like that, 1,500 miles away. We did 8,000 plus miles on our 6-week trip. We plan to go different places. We can go on any given weekend anywhere, or stay overnight if we want, whatever. We've upped our quality of business life where it's much more enjoyable. The van here is now more or less Wheeler's. I'm trying to get my second house sold, and then there's going to be at some point an upgrade in our future for picking vehicles. All those things are planned. When we travel with 2 vehicles, so my wife has a little more flexibility when she comes along and doesn't have to be tied to me picking and all that. Your travel life can get a lot better, but I think a couple takeaways, okay, and then I'm going to end this since it's long. I hope there's some good stuff here. I hope this was helpful. Felt like I maximized my travel time a little bit.
Yeah.
So, couple takeaways. one, I would not be afraid to travel out of your area, especially if you're not finding good enough stuff. And by good enough stuff, I mean not making the money you want to make, not making it from part-time to full-time. If you're full-time, making it from spinning your wheels to actually making a decent profit or a decent living. If you're not able to travel and do some of the things that you would like, do not be afraid to travel. Just find ways to cut the corners. If you come from a high level of travel, like you used to have one of these jobs like I did, where you used to travel in nice locations and company cars and you know, all that kind of stuff. I did that at one time, and then you had to kind of slump down. You're gonna have to slump down and suck it up and you know, be willing to press the envelope. Like when we brought carts of stuff into these hotels, that's a little awkward. You got to get your spiel down. You got to be a little bit bold. You got to smile and talk to people and laugh with people. And you know, breakfast for 8 is not the easiest thing to do. You could spend $100 in a hurry on a breakfast, so you got to find the ways to do that. We used to bring a lot of food along for the children, and occasionally early on, Lon and I would go out for an adult meal and, you know, enjoy that. So it did ramp up as we made more money. But do not let the cost of traveling hold you back. You got to find a way, if you're not making it, to get out farther away and find the good stuff. And then, boy, maximize your time. Really maximize your time. This is not a desk job. This is not a 9-to-5 job. This is real life, pedal to the metal. Take a couple deep breaths, sleep 2 days before, sleep 2 days after. But when you get out in the beginning, if you're going to travel and you're hesitant because of the costs, etc., maximize your time. Pick up the business cards. Ask people, do you know where what I'm looking for is? You may come back through there. You do not have to get it all in the first pass. You should go back. You should continually ask. People should know you by name and face. You need to stop into the honey holes and the picking ponds and those places over and over. Doors will open to you. Things will get easier. Build a route. Build a route.
Weird analogy, but it's like a hot dog eating contest on an American Ninja Warrior course. You got to get out there. You got to go from place to place. You got to grab the good stuff and just keep it going.
Keep eating the hot dogs.
Yeah, like how we started out there. I mean, we're really trying to figure out where the stuff is. Where's the stuff? Where's the stuff?
Well, we were hungry.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So if you're, you know, this is a whole different subject, but if you're a little too passive in this business, if you're a little too soft, if you're a little too non-aggressive, and by non-aggressive, I don't mean you have to go out and like beat people's heads or, you know, shock them like muscle cars. But I mean, you got to be a little crazy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we named this channel The Crazy Picker Life for a reason.
Yeah, we didn't get this way by being mild.
It's not just us. The picker way is a little bit crazy.
Well, it is a little crazy, and that kind of stuff will toughen you up in a sense if it doesn't kill you. So, last takeaway, and I'll end this thing. When you, quote, make it, when you start making money, you do have to be careful because the tendency is to overdo it. The tendency is to get a bigger office, commercial office. The tendency is to invest in totes and equipment. The tendency is to buy a bigger van. The tendency, once you get good, people start offering you loans and stuff like that. You know, you start eating better, you start staying better places. You still have to keep tabs on that because even as your business is growing and getting bigger, your costs can go exponential if you're not careful. And I kept tabs on that. My wife Lon, thank goodness, is on me about that to some degree. We had a lot of fun. We spent a lot of money. We made a lot of money. But, you know, do keep tabs on it. Don't go so hog wild until you know. And what we did for a year is we spent cash only. And then I do, from time to time, borrow money for certain inventories and things like that when I just know it's going to happen. Business expansion is rough on the pocketbook. You want to go from $10,000 in inventory to, I'm talking listed inventory. You want to go from $10,000 in listed inventory to $250,000 or more in listed inventory. There's some costs involved in ramping that up. So watch your dollars, choose your fun spots, enjoy yourself. This is a journey and not a destination. You'll never make it. It's the journey. You're always going to want more or different, or it will change. Enjoy the journey.
I was going to say, this business is definitely not a get-rich-quick business, as you can see by our journey. Some people would call it that.
Well, yeah, we came from pretty close to the bottom. I don't know when this video is coming out, but do leave us some questions and comments down below. We appreciate that. We will be doing our standard format question and answer show. And what we do is we take questions from the preceding 4 or 6 weeks or so, and we will print them out and we will read them. Typically it's a 2 or 3 hour show, and we just go through the questions and answer them, both Wheeler and I, and we have fun. So feel free to start submitting questions. We're probably going to do a question and answer show late next week. Yeah, I'd come off the cruise here. You're probably going to have to come off soon anyway.
Yep, off it.
So, other than that, I appreciate you watching. I appreciate the positive and supportive and constructive criticism. If there is one, comments, I appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Wheeler? Pick well. I don't know if you had anything.
No.
Pick well. List often. Travel well. Dealer out.
Found us.
What? Are you following us around?
Yeah.
Why are these things following us?